Today on The Conservative Rebel, the leftist media is churning out propaganda claiming Trump is a lawless tyrant because he refuses to return a deported El Salvadoran national and suspected MS-13 terrorist back to the United States. They have declared that America is officially in a constitutional crisis because the Supreme Court ordered him to do just that. Crying about criminals and gangsters being deported is a great strategy the Democrats should use if they want to get destroyed in the next election. Fortunately, it looks like they might be stupid enough to do just that. You're listening to The Conservative Rebel. Recently, the media has been running a lot of headlines about Orange Hitler deporting an innocent Maryland dad. That's the term practically every major media outlet has mysteriously been using to describe this guy. This Maryland dad's name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And this Maryland dad is so selfless, he's so caring and upright, he's such a light of positivity shining in his community, he's a saintly role model for us all to look up to. He has a little halo floating over his head, and his only mission in life is to serve others and bring them joy. Maybe you've seen the headlines about this man. Now, this Maryland dad is, it's true, an illegal alien. His first action in this country was to defy its laws and spit in the face of its people by illegally entering without permission. He also is a suspected member of a Satan-worshipping drug gang that routinely murders innocent people and makes its money by selling poison to the American population. In fact, 2 courts have ruled he's a member of MS-13, but the wonderful people in the media didn't let these inconvenient facts distract them from what's truly important in this story, which is that this suspected terrorist is a dad, and he's apparently living in Maryland, so he must be a great guy. Neither did the leftist robots who they programmed to wave around protest signs demanding that Trump bring Kilmar home. Yes, unborn children are being murdered, young kids are being mutilated, and the government is sucking the life out of the economy with taxes, but to these morons, the most important issue facing the country today is the fact that Trump deported a suspected MS-13 terrorist to El Salvador. That's the thing that keeps them up at night. While those of us with real lives might be concerned about the economy or abortion, they're waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because of the horrifying fact that there's one less criminal alien in the country. While a lot of people are saying there's not definitive proof that this man is a member of MS-13, as the Trump administration suspects, and again, 2 courts ruled that he was, there is definitive proof that he's an illegal alien. He broke the laws of this country. He doesn't belong here. The left's not disputing that point. Their entire argument that this guy needs to be shipped back to the US at taxpayer expense is, well, we don't know for certain that he's a member of MS-13. You can't prove he's a murderer who sells poison. First of all, this is an illegal alien. I don't care if he's a kind, caring, wonderful angel. He broke the laws of this country. He doesn't belong here, so he's a criminal. He needs to leave. And when you break the law, guess what? You need to face the consequences of your actions. Secondly, if there's even a 5% chance that this guy is a member of a Satan-worshipping terrorist organization, and obviously the chance is far higher than that, I want him as far away from my country as possible, like every other sane American. But the Supreme Court, which as everyone who reads CNN knows is controlled by dangerous far-right extremists, had a different perspective. They recently ruled unanimously that Trump needs to facilitate the return of this illegal alien to the United States. They believed that to be their clear moral and constitutional duty, apparently. But on Monday, the Trump administration made very clear it has no intentions of obeying this stupid ruling. Here's Stephen Miller explaining. Listen to this.
Is the president asking President Bukele today to send Mr. Abrego Garcia back to the U.S.?
Well, again, to be very clear about this, the Supreme Court ruled that the district court cannot, obviously, compel us to conduct diplomacy or foreign policy with another nation. And so they overturned the district court order, and they said very clearly that the district court, it was actually a unanimous ruling, overreached in that ruling. I'm not going to reveal any head of state conversations or conversations at the State Department or the lower level, but the important point that we all agree on is that he's an El Salvadorian. That is his country of nativity and citizenship. He is an illegal alien in the United States. He has no lawful right to be here. He was issued a final order of removal from this country. And so it's up to El Salvador and to the government and the people of El Salvador what the fate of their own citizens is. We can't extradite citizens of foreign countries to our country over the objection of those countries. Obviously, to do that would be a monstrous violation of international law. We can't go into other countries and kidnap their citizens and then take them back into our country. That's up to El Salvador.
But you can ask them to send him back, right?
But it's their own citizen, right? So remember, this whole entire conversation has been wrong from the beginning because nobody was mistakenly deported anyone. That's like the big fact that most of you have gotten it wrong. No one was mistakenly sent anywhere. The only mistake that was made is a lawyer put an incorrect line in a legal filing and they've since been relieved of duty. He is El Salvadorian. He is an illegal alien. He was deported to El Salvador. I would welcome anyone here to tell me what country they think we should be sending El Salvadorian illegal aliens to.
So what Stephen Miller does here is really smart. He's saying that the United States has no authority over the citizens of foreign countries. It has no authority to take away citizens of El Salvador, who are in El Salvadoran prisons, from El Salvador, and fly them back to the United States. The government of El Salvador wouldn't like that, and it would be a violation of international law, as he said. And we don't have to guess at that. On Monday, President Trump held a press conference with the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, and reporters asked Bukele whether he had any intentions of sending this criminal back to the United States. Here's how Bukele responded.
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. We're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into our
country. There's a fascination.
They would love it. They're sick. These are sick people.
And Trump, of course, gestures to the reporters while he says sick people. This guy is hilarious sometimes. But this Bukele guy, he knows how to deal with criminals. When he said El Salvador was once the murder capital of the world, he wasn't exaggerating. It was one of the single deadliest countries in the world, totally overrun with gangsters and other terrorists. It had a murder rate 20 times higher than the United States because cowardly leftists who were too afraid to confront these criminals ran that country. But Bukele quickly transformed it from one of the most dangerous countries in the world to one of the safest, by imprisoning thousands upon thousands of these terrorists in hellish prisons with unbearable conditions, which is exactly what its inmates deserve. If you haven't seen the videos, you should check them out. It will fill you with joy and satisfaction to see the misery the worst people on the planet are currently enduring. 2% of the population of El Salvador is in prison right now. 1 in 50 people. That's how much of a gang problem they had. So when Trump is sending these illegals to El Salvador, he is sending them to a country that is very hard on crime. He is striking terror into their hearts. Absolute terror into the hearts of Trendiaragua and MS-13 by doing this. And that's the only way to handle these criminals. You have to make the price of murder and the other horrendous things these gangs do so unbearably high and inflict so much misery and suffering on these people who are killing and raping and pillaging that they live in terror. And that's hopefully what Trump's doing by sending these people to El Salvador. He can't show mercy, he can't cave into the bleeding hearts and crybabies and sissies, and fortunately it looks like Trump has no intentions of doing it. Now, real quick, I want you to listen to this last clip. It's of Pam Bondi, who's the Attorney General. She was also at the press conference, and she explained to the reporters just who this Maryland dad they've spent weeks crying about actually is.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
Now, the media, of course, is having an absolute meltdown over this. They're running headlines like this one. Man mistakenly deported to El Salvador won't be returned to U.S. Lawyers defy court over status of wrongly deported Maryland dad. President of El Salvador won't return deported Maryland father. Both the U.S. and El Salvador refuse to return wrongly deported man to the U.S. They're especially angry that Trump is refusing to obey the every whim of the robed ones on the Supreme Court, who are supposed to have godlike power to command the president to do anything they want. The legal news outlet Courthouse News has this headline, quote, "We are in a moment of constitutional crisis. Legal experts are calling out President Trump for defying the Supreme Court's order to help return a Maryland father to the U.S. after the administration unlawfully deported him to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Quote, "We are in a moment of constitutional crisis. Alora Mukherjee, there's another very traditional name for you, a law professor at Columbia, said. Quote, "The U.S. Constitution sets up a system of checks and balances where the branches respect one another, and the executive branch generally complies with federal court orders, especially when they're issued by the U.S. Supreme Court. In the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland father sent to El Salvador last month, the Trump administration has crossed a line between veiled resistance and actual defiance, court watchers say. Quote, "What we've seen is an executive branch that is intent on pushing the bounds of its authority as far as possible, and now beyond the breaking point of our constitutional democracy," Mukherjee said. Now, we've been over the issue of judicial tyranny on this show before. We've talked about how the judiciary was never supposed to be so powerful. It's supposed to be the weakest branch of government, not some all-powerful cabal of unelected oracles in flowing robes who can command anyone to do anything they want and can never be held accountable to anyone ever, which is what we've all been taught to believe. Obviously, the Supreme Court is overstepping its bounds here. It can't stop the president from carrying out a perfectly constitutional function of the executive branch. That's literally what the executive branch is for, is to enforce the laws of the country. It's right there in the name, executive, execute the laws of the country. But you're not going to hear that whole rant again. You know all of this, you've heard it before. What I do want to focus on is the unbelievable hypocrisy of these people, because it's completely off the charts. When one president treasonously imports tens of millions of illegal aliens into the country, including some of the worst, most violent psychopaths on the planet, when he brings them into this country to terrorize its people for his own political purposes, that's perfectly legal. That's perfectly constitutional. In fact, if you dare to question it, you're a racist bigot who deserves to burn in hell. But when another president decides that actually he's going to fulfill his constitutional duty and enforce the laws of this country, actually he's going to protect the people of this country and the national sovereignty of this country by removing these criminals from the country, then that's a constitutional crisis. That's authoritarianism. This is actually what these people think, or at least pretend to think. This is a glimpse inside the delusional fantasy world these people are living in. It's truly astonishing that some people can be so completely out of touch and so completely divorced from common sense and reality that they can think crazy things like this. But this is the way millions of Americans are, believe it or not. They have this totally self-destructive mentality. The left didn't care when illegal aliens murdered and pillaged and drug trafficked and human trafficked. The leftist media mostly ignored that when it happened in the Biden administration. Instead, they shilled for Joe Biden while he continued to let the murderers and rapists and drug traffickers and terrorists and other assorted scumbags pour into the country. It's when Trump deports the people that committed those crimes that the media starts crying about the Constitution and about the law, which obviously they don't care about at all. And as I said a couple episodes ago, this is a great political strategy. There's nothing that mobilizes independent normie voters more than this. There's no cause independent normie voters are more likely to get behind than the cause of shipping suspected and convicted terrorists back into the United States to continue to commit crimes against United States citizens. So Trump's message to the media and to the left is precisely what it should be. Cry harder, sissies. Cry harder that MS-13 gangsters have to go to a scary prison in El Salvador. See how that works out for you in the next election. And unbelievably, it looks like the left is so stupid that that's exactly what it's going to do. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Conservative Rebel. Please follow the show, leave a review, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you on the next episode.